Today I would like to invite you to listen to the Dhammapada of the Buddha Shakyamuni. 167 verses from the Buddhist scriptures on the YouTube channel Thien Thai in the USA. Do not serve mean ends. Do not live in heedlessness. Do not embrace false views. Do not be a world upholder. During the lifetime of the Buddha, there was a group of young men who became lost in careless living, seeking pleasure without reflection, chasing status without meaning, and following companions who encouraged indulgence and confusion. They believed life was meant only for enjoyment and dismissed all teachings about morality, mindfulness, and spiritual discipline. Over time, their actions led them into conflict, disappointment, and inner emptiness. One of them eventually faced great suffering when his family relationships collapsed due to his dishonesty and negligence. In his despair, he approached the Buddha, and the Buddha gently explained that living without awareness and moral direction leads a person towards suffering even if temporary pleasures seem attractive at first. The Buddha pointed out that serving mean ends means directing one's life toward unwholesome intentions such as greed, harm, deception, and indulgence, which eventually destroy peace from within. Another story tells of a merchant who became obsessed with wealth and competition, believing that success justified any means. He cheated others in trade and ignored the consequences of his actions. At first, he gained material success, but gradually fear, anxiety, and mistrust surrounded him, and he could no longer rest peacefully. When he encountered the Dharma, he realized that heedlessness had consumed his life and that false views about success had led him away from true happiness. He learned that real wealth is not external accumulation, but inner purity, peace, and integrity. Through reflection and practice, he slowly changed his behavior, returning to honesty and mindfulness, and his mind gradually became lighter and more peaceful. Dear friends, this teaching from the Dhammapada reveals a profound truth about the direction of human life. The Buddha teaches that every action is guided by intention and that the quality of intention determines the quality of one's future experience. If one lives heedlessly without awareness, life becomes scattered and unstable. If one embraces false views, perception becomes distorted and suffering increases. If one follows unwholesome ends, even success becomes empty and painful. Therefore, the Buddha encourages careful attention to how one lives, thinks, speaks, and acts, because these shape the entire experience of existence. Dear friends, the Buddha's teaching on heedlessness is deeply relevant to all generations. Heedlessness means living without mindfulness, without reflection, and without awareness of consequences. A heedless mind follows impulse blindly, reacting to desire, anger, and confusion without wisdom. In ancient times, heedlessness led people into violence, dishonesty, and destruction of relationships. In the modern world, heedlessness appears in different forms such as constant distraction, addiction to entertainment, careless speech on digital platforms, and emotional reactivity in social interactions. Although the external conditions have changed, the inner cause remains the same. When mindfulness is absent, the mind loses clarity and direction. The Buddha compared heedlessness to walking in darkness without a lamp. A person may move forward but is likely to stumble, fall, or become lost. In contrast, mindfulness is like carrying a light that reveals the path clearly, allowing each step to be taken with wisdom and care. Therefore, spiritual practice begins with cultivating awareness in every moment of daily life, even in simple actions such as speaking, eating, walking, and listening. During the time of the Buddha, there was also a monk who struggled with wrong views about spiritual practice. He believed that strict rituals alone could lead to liberation without cultivating compassion or understanding. Because of this belief, he became rigid, judgmental, and disconnected from the deeper essence of the Dharma. The Buddha compassionately taught him that clinging to false views creates inner separation from truth. A person may perform many external practices, yet still remain far from liberation if the mind is clouded by misunderstanding. Upon hearing this teaching, the monk realized that spiritual life is not merely about external form, but about transformation of consciousness. He began practicing mindfulness, compassion, and wisdom together, and gradually his heart softened and became more peaceful. Dear friends, this story shows that embracing false views prevents spiritual growth, while openness to truth allows transformation to unfold naturally. The Buddha also warned against becoming a world upholder in the sense of clinging tightly to worldly identity, possessions, and transient conditions as if they were permanent or ultimate. Human beings often identify strongly with roles, status, achievements, and relationships, believing these define who they are. Yet all conditioned things are impermanent and constantly changing. When attachment becomes too strong, suffering arises whenever change occurs. The Buddha taught that clinging to the world as fixed leads to disappointment because the nature of existence is fluid and ever-changing. Instead of resisting change, the Buddha encouraged understanding impermanence deeply. When impermanence is clearly seen, the heart becomes more flexible, peaceful, and free from excessive attachment. A person who understands impermanence can still engage fully in life while maintaining inner stability and equanimity. Dear friends, the teachings of this verse invite deep reflection on the direction of human life. Every person is constantly shaping their own future through intention and action. If intention is guided by greed, hatred, and ignorance, suffering will inevitably follow. If intention is guided by mindfulness, compassion, and wisdom, peace will naturally arise. The Buddha never forced belief, but instead encouraged direct observation of life and experience. When one observes carefully, it becomes clear that harmful actions bring disturbance to the mind, while wholesome actions bring harmony and clarity. This understanding is not theoretical but experiential. Each person can verify it directly through mindful living. In daily life, serving mean ends may appear in subtle forms, such as speaking harshly to gain advantage, deceiving others for personal benefit, or neglecting ethical principles for convenience. Although such actions may bring short-term gain, they inevitably disturb the mind. The Buddha taught that a peaceful conscience is more valuable than external success. When actions align with moral integrity, the mind becomes calm and free from inner conflict. This calmness is a form of happiness that cannot be purchased or externally obtained. It arises naturally from living in harmony with truth and compassion. Heedlessness also manifests when individuals fail to reflect on the consequences of their actions. In moments of distraction or emotional reaction, people may say or do things that later cause regret. The Buddha encouraged cultivating mindfulness as a constant companion. Mindfulness allows one to pause before reacting, to observe emotions without being controlled by them, and to choose responses that reduce suffering. Over time, this practice transforms the quality of life, creating greater harmony in relationships and greater peace within oneself. False views are another major obstacle described in this teaching. A false view is any understanding that distorts reality and leads to suffering. Common false views include the belief that happiness depends entirely on external conditions, that harming others leads to true success, or that life has no moral structure. The Buddha taught that such views arise from ignorance and are corrected through wisdom and direct insight. When false views are replaced by right understanding, perception becomes clearer and life becomes more balanced. One begins to see that actions have consequences, that compassion is beneficial, and that inner cultivation is essential for lasting peace. Dear friends, the Buddha's message is always one of awakening rather than condemnation. He does not criticize human beings for their confusion, but gently points toward clarity. He encourages each person to examine their own mind with honesty and courage. Through this examination, one discovers both the causes of suffering and the path toward liberation. The path is not distant or abstract. It exists within each moment of awareness, each decision, each thought, and each action. As practitioners reflect on this verse, they are invited to ask themselves whether their daily life is guided by mindfulness or heedlessness, by wisdom or false views, by wholesome intentions or harmful ones. This reflection is not meant to create guilt, but to inspire transformation. The Buddha's teachings always return to the possibility of change. No matter how confused or misguided one may have been in the past, the present moment offers an opportunity for renewal. Each breath becomes a chance to begin again with awareness and compassion. Dear friends, let us continue to cultivate mindfulness in every aspect of life. Let us avoid heedlessness by remaining present and attentive. Let us release false views through understanding and reflection. Let us choose wholesome intentions that lead toward peace and harmony. In doing so, we walk gradually toward liberation from suffering and greater clarity of mind. Dear friends, the teaching of the Buddha continues to unfold when we look more deeply into the nature of heedlessness in everyday life. Heedlessness is not only forgetting moral discipline, but also forgetting the present moment in which life is actually lived. Many people move through their days as if carried by invisible currents of habit, reacting automatically to sounds, emotions, memories, and expectations. In such a condition, the mind loses its center and becomes easily influenced by external conditions. The Buddha gently pointed out that when awareness is absent, even good intentions may become unstable, because actions are no longer guided by clear understanding, but by impulse and conditioning. In contrast, mindfulness restores clarity and stability, allowing each moment to be met with wisdom rather than confusion. This is why the Buddha repeatedly encouraged practitioners to return again and again to awareness, as if returning home after wandering in many directions. Dear friends, there was once a young practitioner during the time of the Buddha who sincerely wished to cultivate virtue but struggled with distraction. He would begin his day with determination to practice mindfulness, yet soon become absorbed in thoughts of the future, worries about success, and memories of past experiences. Because of this, his practice remained weak and inconsistent. One day he approached the Buddha with humility and confessed that despite sincere effort, he could not maintain awareness. The Buddha did not criticize him, but instead offered a gentle reflection. He explained that the mind is like a restless animal that must be trained patiently rather than forced harshly. When the practitioner understood this, he stopped expecting immediate perfection and began practicing small moments of awareness throughout daily life. Each time he noticed distraction, he gently returned to the breath without judgment. Gradually, his mind became calmer and more stable. This story teaches that heedlessness is not overcome through force, but through gentle and continuous mindfulness. The Buddha also emphasized that false views often arise when people rely only on superficial perception without deeper reflection. Human beings tend to interpret life through limited experience, personal desires, and emotional reactions. Because of this, misunderstanding easily arises about what leads to happiness and what leads to suffering. For example, some people believe that accumulating possessions will permanently secure peace. Yet even after acquiring many things, dissatisfaction remains. Others believe that controlling external circumstances will remove all suffering. Yet life constantly changes beyond control. The Buddha encouraged direct observation of experience to see clearly that attachment to impermanent conditions inevitably leads to instability. When this understanding becomes clear, the mind naturally begins to loosen its grip on false assumptions and moves toward wisdom. Dear friends, in another teaching story, there was an elder who devoted much of his life to material success while neglecting reflection on impermanence. He believed that stability in wealth and reputation would bring lasting security. However, when unexpected changes occurred in his life, he experienced deep distress because his sense of identity was strongly attached to external conditions. In his suffering, he encountered a compassionate monk who shared the Buddha's teaching about impermanence. The monk explained that all conditioned things are subject to change and cannot serve as ultimate refuge. Hearing this, the elder initially felt resistance because his beliefs were deeply rooted. Yet over time, through reflection and experience, he began to see the truth of impermanence directly. As understanding deepened, his attachment softened and his mind became more peaceful. He realized that true security lies not in controlling the world, but in cultivating inner wisdom and equanimity. Dear friends, the Buddha's teaching on not becoming a world upholder also points to the danger of clinging to fixed identities and rigid conceptions of existence. Many human beings unconsciously construct a solid sense of self based on roles, achievements, opinions, and possessions. They believe that maintaining these structures will provide lasting happiness. However, when circumstances inevitably change, this rigid identity becomes a source of suffering. The Buddha taught that what we call self is a dynamic flow of changing processes rather than a fixed entity. When this truth is deeply understood, attachment to rigid identity begins to dissolve, allowing greater freedom and flexibility of mind. A person who is not bound by rigid identity can adapt more easily to life's changes and respond with wisdom rather than fear. In daily life, heedlessness often appears in subtle ways that are not immediately recognized. A person may speak without awareness, causing harm through careless words. Another may act out of habit without considering consequences, creating unnecessary conflict. Another may spend long hours distracted by entertainment, losing connection with inner reflection. The Buddha did not condemn human life, but invited awareness into every action. Even simple activities such as walking, eating, speaking, and listening can become opportunities for mindfulness. When awareness is present, ordinary life becomes a field of practice. When awareness is absent, even meaningful actions may lose their beneficial quality. Dear friends, there is also a profound connection between heedlessness and emotional suffering. When the mind is not anchored in awareness, emotions such as anger, fear, jealousy, and craving can arise strongly and lead to unskillful actions. In moments of emotional intensity, people often act in ways they later regret. The Buddha taught that mindfulness creates a space between emotion and reaction, allowing wisdom to guide behavior instead of impulse. This space is extremely precious because it allows transformation of suffering energy into understanding and compassion. With practice, emotions no longer control the individual but become objects of mindful observation, leading to greater freedom. The Buddha's path is often described as a path of gradual cultivation rather than sudden transformation. This is important because many people become discouraged when they do not see immediate results. However, just as a seed grows slowly into a tree through consistent nourishment, so too does mindfulness and wisdom develop through steady practice. Each moment of awareness is a small step toward greater clarity. Each moment of compassion is a small step toward greater freedom from selfishness. Over time, these small steps accumulate into profound transformation of character and perception. Dear friends, another important aspect of this teaching is the understanding that spiritual life is not separate from ordinary life. Some people mistakenly believe that awakening exists only in isolated meditation or special religious settings. However, the Buddha taught that true practice must be integrated into every aspect of life. Whether one is working, resting, speaking, or facing difficulty, each situation can become an opportunity for mindfulness. When this understanding is applied, life itself becomes the path. There is no separation between practice and living. Every moment becomes a chance to cultivate awareness and wisdom. The Buddha also reminded practitioners that suffering often arises from ignorance rather than external events themselves. Two people may experience similar conditions, yet respond differently depending on their level of awareness. One may react with anger and distress, while another responds with patience and understanding. The difference lies not in external circumstances, but in the state of the mind. Therefore, the Buddha encouraged transforming the mind rather than trying to control every external condition. When the mind becomes clearer, external conditions are experienced with greater equanimity. Dear friends, let us continue reflecting deeply on this teaching and apply it gently in our daily lives. Let us become more aware of moments of heedlessness and gradually replace them with mindfulness. Let us recognize false views and allow wisdom to dissolve them through understanding. Let us observe the impermanent nature of all things and release excessive attachment. In doing so, we walk the path toward greater peace, clarity, and liberation. Dear friends, as we come toward the completion of this Dharma reflection on the teaching of the Buddha, we are invited to gather all understanding into a single point of awareness. The Buddha's words on heedlessness, false views, and attachment to unstable identities are not meant to create fear, but to awaken clarity and liberation. When we look deeply into our own experience, we begin to see that every moment of confusion has always been accompanied by a lack of awareness. And every moment of suffering has always contained the possibility of understanding. Nothing in the Dharma is separate from this present mind. The Buddha taught that life is constantly flowing like a river, never remaining the same even for a single moment. When human beings cling to what is changing as if it were permanent, suffering naturally arises. When they resist reality instead of understanding it, confusion deepens. But when awareness is present, the mind becomes like clear water reflecting the sky without distortion. In that clarity, we begin to recognize that freedom is not something far away to be obtained later, but something that becomes visible right here when ignorance is gently released. Dear friends, the essence of this teaching is not only about avoiding unwholesome actions, but about awakening a completely different way of seeing life. Instead of living in heedlessness, we begin to live in mindfulness. Instead of embracing false views, we begin to see reality with openness. Instead of clinging to fixed identity, we begin to rest in understanding that all formations are impermanent and interconnected. This shift is not achieved through force, but through continuous gentle awareness. In daily life, this means returning again and again to presence. When anger arises, we know anger is present. When joy arises, we know joy is present. When confusion arises, we know confusion is present. This knowing itself is the beginning of freedom. The Buddha never asked us to destroy experience, but to understand it clearly. Through understanding, suffering loses its power to control the heart. Through awareness, even difficult emotions become teachers rather than enemies. Dear friends, a life guided by Dharma is a life of gradual purification. Each moment of mindfulness is like a drop of clean water entering a vessel that was once cloudy. Over time, clarity increases naturally. There is no need for harsh judgment or self-criticism. The path is one of patience, kindness, and steady cultivation. Just as dawn slowly replaces darkness without struggle, so too does wisdom gradually replace ignorance within the mind. The Buddha's compassion is evident in every aspect of this teaching. He did not speak to condemn human weakness, but to reveal the possibility of awakening in every person. No matter how many times one has fallen into heedlessness, the next moment always contains the opportunity to begin again. This is the living hope of the Dharma. Every breath becomes a doorway back to awareness. Every step becomes a chance to return to clarity. Dear friends, let us remember that spiritual practice is not separate from ordinary life. It is found in how we speak, how we listen, how we think, and how we respond to the world around us. When awareness is present, even simple actions become sacred. When awareness is absent, even important actions lose their depth. Therefore, we return to awareness not only in meditation, but in every situation of daily living. As we reflect on the 167th verse, we see that the Buddha is pointing us away from heedlessness and toward mindful living, away from false views and toward direct understanding, away from attachment to unstable conditions and toward inner clarity. This is not a path of escape from life, but a path of deep engagement with life in its truest form. Dear friends, may we continue to walk this path with sincerity and patience. May we learn from our mistakes without discouragement. May we cultivate mindfulness in small moments and great moments alike. May wisdom gradually illuminate the heart and bring peace not only to ourselves, but to all beings we encounter. Thank you for watching my video. Namo Amitabha. I wish to bring this merit towards all disciples and sentient beings, all of whom will attain Buddhahood. Remember to like, share, and subscribe to my YouTube channel. I really appreciate your time.